Welcome to the Blessors of Israel Podcast. I'm Matthew Dodd, Executive Director of Blessors of Israel. Honored to be back in studio again with Pastor Rich Jones. He's the founder and chairman of Blessors of Israel. It's been a while.
Yes.
I've been away in Israel, Footsteps of Paul cruise, helping to manage a cruise as well. And now we're back in studio. So much has happened since we've been together in the studio. And,
yes, so much.
And I wanted to highlight several things. First and foremost, beginning with yesterday, a day of remembrance of the Holocaust in Israel and also in Poland. Around 10 a.m. in Israel time, sirens went off for 2 minutes. Everyone in Israel paused to reflect upon the atrocities inflicted upon the Jewish people by the Nazis. 6 million Jews
Now, by the way,
killed.
we were in Israel when the Holocaust remembrance was happening. I don't know if you were with us.
I was with you. I do remember that, yes.
And we had a large group of people with us touring Israel.
Yeah.
And so when the sirens went off, literally all traffic stops.
Everything stops right there in the middle of the freeway.
You just stop right where you are, including on the freeway. And we got out the bus, and you pay... You pay, you might say, acknowledgement of the suffering of 6 million Jews died, but the suffering of that nation and that people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a sobering, somber event. I just remember how touching it was, how literally the nation comes to a complete halt. And you get off the bus, everybody's outside their cars, and there's just such a moment. It's very touching.
80 years later. 80 years later.
Yeah. And, we've been to the Yad Vashem Museum, Holocaust Museum in Israel many times. And I would love to suggest everybody go there.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is moving, it's touching. You see shoes, clothes of those that were taken off of those being killed. You see names, you see pictures and videos of families, and it just makes you realize the suffering and that they went through. Israel did, and the cruelty of humanity, and then it brings to mind the recent suffering of Israel since October 7th, or on October 7th, and since that day. That such a tragedy unfolded.
Absolutely. Ambassador to Israel from the United States, Mike Huckabee, it was his first opportunity to, and acting like an ambassador to give a speech there. I thought it was interesting, one of his comments that he made, and I quote, he goes, "I do not understand anti-Semitism or the hatred that history has inflicted upon the Jewish people. The animosity towards them makes no sense. It is irrational, baseless, and directed at those who have done no wrong." And I understand what he's saying there from a human perspective, but from a biblical perspective, we clearly understand
That's right.
why there's anti-Semitism, why this has been directed at the Jews. And it all goes back to Genesis chapter 3, God's promise to the woman, Eve, that her seed would crush the head of the serpent. And then down through biblical history, we see a defining, a narrowing of who that seed, that one would be, Jesus Christ the Messiah. And so anti-Semitism is directed at the Jews because prior to the coming of Christ, Lucifer wants to obliterate the Jews so the Messiah can't come.
Well, essentially what you're saying is that there's a spiritual warfare behind anti-Semitism, and you can see that in history. You can see it in the Bible. I mean, Revelation speaks of the great dragon that's waiting for the birth of the child to swallow it up, and on in the scriptures. But in history, we could recount the waves of anti-Semitism that have been decimated upon Israel over the centuries. It's been one wave after the other, the Holocaust being of course, the one with the greatest tragedy, but still, it's been a world factor since really the earliest days. But then we also have to trace it back to Isaac and Ishmael, the sons of Abraham, and the conflict between the Arab nations and Israel, which was prophesied and spoken of in the scriptures, so it's biblical in that sense. And then I think we add another factor to anti-Semitism, and that is, I think that there have been a number of Christians that have been anti-Semitic because they blamed the Jews for the crucifixion of Jesus.
Since we started Blessors of Israel, I've heard, we've even talked about, Christians and anti-Semitism, but the amount of anti-Semitic comments that Blessors of Israel has received on their Facebook page, YouTube, Rumble, amazing. And it's been shocking to me how Christians will say, how can you stand with those who crucified Jesus? What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, I think we should quote the Lord Jesus. No man takes my life from me. Right? This is what Jesus said. No man takes my life from me. I lay it down on my own accord. Right? This that Jesus accomplished for us on the cross was the purpose of God from the very beginning. It was the will of God and the purpose of God that the Son of God would die that day because he made payment for our sins and payment in full when he died on the cross. It was the purpose of God that was foretold. You can go all the way back to the very beginning in Genesis and walk through all the scriptures. It was the purpose of God. Why do people blame the Jews? It's so wrong on every level. This was according to the purpose and the fulfillment of scriptures, and we could go on and on in that regard. No man takes my life from me. I lay it down on my own accord.
And God clearly is not done with Israel yet. You look at the promises that were given to Abraham. They were unconditional, unilateral promises,
That's right.
Genesis
That's
15.
Right.
And so therefore, it wasn't based on Israel's ability to keep their end of the bargain. It's all about the one who promised. God promised. Therefore, even though Israel failed to keep the law, even though Israel rejected Jesus Christ at his first coming, God's promises still stand and are yet to be fulfilled with the return of Jesus Christ. And by the way, I might add, that's the other reason why there's been the persecution of the Jews. Nazi Germany, October 7th, 2023, and what we're seeing ever since that time. There's been, I think, a rise of anti-Semitism. In fact, the Anti-Defamation League came out this week with a report that anti-Semitism is rising to unprecedented levels within the United States.
And we're seeing it, of course, on college campuses as maybe the most visible evidence of it, but it's everywhere.
It is.
And it's a great tragedy, and it's certainly the Holocaust Remembrance Day commemorates the great tragedy, but it does remind us of the suffering on October 7th. We cannot forget that there are still today 59 hostages remaining because of the intent of Hamas to destroy Israel.
5,000 terrorists entered into Israel. 1,200 people were killed.
That's right.
Hundreds were taken hostage.
250 something.
And then, as you said, 59 still remain. You're exactly right. Now, what's interesting, there is a rise within Gaza right now, the BBC's reporting, and we've seen this rumbling. In fact, Blessors of Israel has posted different articles from other sources in regards to the groundswell of anti-Hamas protests
in Gaza. Well, that's amazing.
In Gaza, they're tired. They're tired of what's happened. They're blaming Hamas. Now, interesting. Some of them are saying, "Well, we didn't want you to be in control of us," and I would push back on that one. Clearly, they voted them in.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes, but they are actually saying, well, we didn't want this. Gaza's not Hamas and Hamas is not Gaza. Well, no, you did want them in, and there was quite a long time where even during this Hamas-Israel conflict, there was polling done. It made it clear they were expecting Hamas to come back, and they wanted Hamas to come back, but things have begun to pivot.
Sure.
And it really is very interesting to see, like with the recent report, they're saying out, out, out. We want you done. We want you out. And we want you to no longer have any type of rule over us. Lay down your weapons. Let us go back to life.
Well, I think it's just very much like any population of a people. You're going to have opinions that vary dramatically, right? They were voted in. Yes, Hamas was voted in. But it was not 100% of the vote. There was an element that says we don't want them. Now, at the time, it was a kind of a wait-and-see thing. Well, then we waited and we saw Hamas revealed who they really were, and their intent was not to rebuild any kind of, great society or any kind of culture of any kind of development. No, their one intent and purpose was destroy Israel. They took all the monies that the nation sent to them, billions and billions of dollars were spent not on rebuilding Gaza, not in making it a wonderful place to inhabit for the people, the benefit of the people. No, they started building terror tunnels with the purpose and intent of destroying Israel. They started manufacturing weapons and missiles and whatnot. And so then when they executed that plan on October 7th, and then Israel's response to it has been very, very strong, as they could have predicted it would have been, very strong. Now, many of the people in Gaza are saying enough. Mm-hmm. Like, if we could vote again, now there's still a lot of people that support Hamas. Hey, they've been rebuilding.
They've been rebuilding their ranks.
That's right.
About 30,000 is believed.
And so where did they get those? They got them from supporters.
Exactly right. It does appear, though, that some of the, in the past, Hamas would just either threaten or kill those who protest. Any type of anti-Hamas rhetoric,
that's right,
you were gone or hurt severely. But now, because of Israel's presence, the IDF's presence within Gaza, many of Hamas, they're just hiding in the tunnels.
That's right.
And so now it's festering above ground.
And so they're a little more bold.
They are.
But you're right. Before they were afraid that they'd be killed. But now there's a boldness to say, let's protest, and hopefully they'll build enough momentum that others can join that protest.
And there are those who are interested in taking up President Donald Trump's offer to move somewhere else.
Exactly.
Let us go. We want to go. We want to build our lives. We want to build our family. We've been under your leadership since 2007. Look at my life. It's nothing.
Exactly. Give me the opportunity. I'll take it. Now, interestingly enough, the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, made a speech recently in the United Nations, and I'm sure you've got some comments on that.
Well, yeah, he called them, interestingly enough, dogs, sons of dogs.
Sons of dogs.
Yeah.
What an interesting insult.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, when we think of dogs here in the United States, we think of man's best friend. But when you go to Israel, you go to the Middle East, or not even in Africa, usually they're just stray dogs, and they're considered unclean. It's not man's best friend.
No. And frankly, even in our society, to call somebody the son of a dog is actually a very common insult today. They don't use that same phrase. It's a little different.
It's a little bit different,
but it means the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? He was probably Mahmoud Abbas was referring to a female dog, probably, and therefore it correlates to the same insult that we use. So that's interesting that he would have the boldness to stand in front of the nations of the world and call them out as sons of dogs and say, let the people go.
Yeah, you've started this, you need to end it, lay down your weapons and go.
Yeah, because, and his point was, and I think it's a valid point, you are giving Israel the rationale to destroy Gaza. And rightly so, Israel says, absolutely, we're going to take out Hamas, and if they're going to embed themselves in the hospitals or schools or whatever, that gives us the legal right to go in and get them out wherever they may be, and we're going to make sure that this never happens again. And so they're prosecuting a very strong hand.
But that being said, the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, is no friend of Israel. He also is basically saying, hey, there's going to be pay for play when it comes to pay for slave for terrorist attacks on Israel, for bombing.
If those who are watching don't know what that program is, which has been going for years, which our United States tax dollars paid for years, that pay to slay essentially is what?
Pay to slay is basically that the families of those who died as a result of killing Jews, those families will now receive financial support, or if they were imprisoned, they will receive financial support from the United States of America.
Well, now there were I don't
U.S. dollars.
I don't remember the name of the law that was passed some years ago, but it was a law that the United States funding could not be used as such, and so I think there was some progress that way. But the United Nations still funds the Palestinian Authority, and without restriction to where those funds go. And the Palestinian Authority essentially said to the families of these young men that attack Israel that if they injure. If they're injured in the process, they get so much money. If they're killed in the process, they get so much money. If they kill a Jew, they get so much money. Exactly. And this is an ongoing support thing. Now,
and Mahmoud Abbas says, we are completely supporting that. We want to be involved with that. Nothing's changed whatsoever.
Nothing's changed by that. But Israel's response, by the way, is that if a family attacks, or let's say a young man from a family attacks Israel and kills an Israeli, they will come down and they will destroy the home. They'll actually bring bulldozers down and destroy the home. So that kind of takes away the financial incentive. You see, that's kind of their counteract. But it's still it's a terrible program. Mahmoud Abbas has never come out and said, we renounce it. It's wrong, we stop it. Never come out.
No, they've just postured themselves because they want to be the ones who take over Gaza again after they were ousted in 2006.
And nobody believes that would ever work.
Exactly right. And Israel's completely opposed to it, and rightly so. It's another existential threat. Now, another topic I want to talk about is the whole arrangement, the negotiations between the United States and Iran regarding their nuclear program. This is very, very interesting what's developing here. You're hearing mixed messages in regards to the development, but I wanted to get your take on it. We know that Steve Witkoff, ambassador for the United States, he met with the Iranian foreign minister, Arahi, and it appears it was indirect talks, which is very fascinating because if you have 4 hours of talks, but you're going through mediators, interpreters, I've heard that basically that boils it down to about actually 1 hour of constructive dialogue out of 4.
Well, but they're still talking.
They're talking, which is positive.
That's the point. They're negotiating, right? And Iran is motivated, They're motivated because, number one, they don't want to be attacked. I mean, the United States has been building up the military presence in the Mediterranean and in the Gulf, the Persian Gulf particularly, as a show of force. And they make no...
They've got the bombers there.
They make it clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
If negotiations fail, we have another plan, which is military force.
And President Trump has rightly said, hey, I want to make an arrangement, an agreement. I don't want there to be bloodshed. I want there to be peace.
Right.
And at the same time, he's put a limit on this, 60 days. Clock is ticking. And so now Iran's pushing back, saying, I'm not sure, depending on how granular you want to get, United States, how much we could really work out within 60 days. Now, when I read that, I hear one thing, stall.
Right, delay tactics.
Stall tactics.
Right.
And what are your thoughts about that?
Well, and of course, they're motivated to, it's that play the game, right, to give the appearance that we're wanting to negotiate. Meanwhile, they want as much time as they can have to refine uranium.
Yeah, enrich it.
Enrich it, thank you. To make it weapons grade, right? Now, part of the negotiations, of course, is that it's being suggested that that this would be provided for them. If they want to have uranium for a domestic power source, nuclear power source, you need to have a certain degree of enrichment to get it there, right? So the United States proposal is, well, we'll just import it, or you can import it. We will provide it for you already enriched. You don't need any enriching capability in country.
We'll bring it to you, so you can use it for peaceful purposes.
Iranian says, no way, right? That's part of the negotiations. Here's our sticking point. We reserve the right to enrich our uranium. Oh, we promise we'll only enrich it to the point.
For peaceful purposes.
That's it. We promise. We promise. You can trust us.
Yeah.
My friend, you can trust. We will abide by this promise. Nobody believes
Not for a second.
Right. So therefore, that's part of the push and the pull of the negotiations. Is there any possibility that this could succeed? I suppose it's possible, not likely.
It's concerning also in Israel. Israel's very concerned about this.
Of course, yes.
CENTCOM commander came out earlier this week and met with them. Coordination. Now, he is very pro attack Iran.
Sure.
But he's also retiring. He's stepping down.
Mm-hmm.
And so Israel's very concerned. So they got the strategic, dynamic alliance that's taking place between the United States and Israel. But you're losing one of your key commanders in CENTCOM, who is a real proponent of attacking Iran, especially now with Iran weakened due to Hezbollah and Hamas weakened, Iranian proxies. So there's a lot of discomfort, a lot of concern that Israel has that what may come from these negotiations brings you back to 2015 and the nuclear arrangement that was made at that time with Iran.
Yeah, I mean, I think Israel's concern is legitimate. Like, any deal that you make needs to really be approved by us.
Exactly.
Now, and they're right. They're absolutely right on that. Because if a deal is made that compromises Israel and puts them at risk, it's not a good deal. And frankly, many had thought that Israel would have attacked Iran by now already, but they have not, right? And I think particularly to give the United States opportunity to negotiate. Let's see how this goes.
It seems like under President Biden, there was pushback in regards to Israel attacking. And then Israel thought, okay, well, President Trump is going to be brought into office here soon, so we can wait things out. He's been very anti-Iran, and so perhaps we'll get what we need. But then President Trump has come in and said, no, we're going to try to do peace first before we bring out the heavy artillery.
Which I think is right.
I agree.
Trying to negotiate.
But unfortunately, Iran is up to the same old business, the stall tactics. And, you know, last year, Blessors of Israel, we published articles. We also shared articles from other sources. It's believed by some that Iran is very, very close. They're putting all the components together, and it'll suddenly just be sprung on you. So they're keeping it under wraps.
Right.
This is even Iranian sources are saying, hey, these things are developing right now. Don't buy into the smoke and mirrors that Iran wants to use, you know, the nuclear power only for peaceful purposes. No, they are going to weaponize this, and they're going to reveal when it's been weaponized when they feel is the right time to do so.
Now, of course, Israel's intelligence is very sophisticated, and they're monitoring this very carefully, and they're feeding information to the United States. So all of it is something we have to watch, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the purposes of Blessors of Israel, is to watch very, very carefully and to inform.
Agreed. Next thing I want to talk about real quickly is that Egypt and China.
Here we go.
Egypt and China, right off of Israel's border, they're holding their first joint drill. Think about this. We know that China wants to increase its footprint, their influence in the Middle East, and Egypt has been building up their military presence along that Israel-Egypt border. We know
in the Sinai.
In the Sinai. Now, we also know that Egypt has been very opposed to any Palestinians coming from the Gaza Strip and being even settled there temporarily. But it's very interesting. Israel's been calling out Egypt for quite some time, and now you have this development on the heels of a war game that China, Russia, and Iran had recently in near the Persian Gulf.
And Russia has made it clear that they want to build a naval base on the Horn of Africa. So there are many developments going on here, and all of them pertain to what we have been saying in regards to Ezekiel 38 and 39.
Couldn't agree more.
But this, now the movement of China and Egypt together, I mean, who would have thought of that, 5 years ago? But the world's changing, and it's a reflection of the fact that China is trying to put their influence onto every area of the world. And in many ways, they think and believe that the United States is trying to pull back from world influence. And so they want to step in and be the world influence now to take that place of the United States.
In fact, one U.S. official said, now clearly the world has two options.
That's right.
And in the Middle East as well. And keep in mind that Egypt receives $1.5 billion in war support, military aid from the United States.
That's right. Direct.
Direct.
And here they're now doing, maybe we could even say, using our military aid to do a joint drill exercise with with China, right near the Israeli border.
Exactly. So very concerning because, referencing back to Ezekiel 38, we know that Israel will be attacked from the north, from the east, and from the south, surrounded on all three sides.
That's right. But also the size of the forces.
Exactly.
Such is the size of those forces that are indicated in Scripture that most would presume it cannot be of that size without China being part of it. So therefore, at some point, China, although, there are certain allusions to it in Scripture, but China will become the heavy hand behind Russia. When Russia then
I think we've already seen that even with Iran and how bold they have been.
Yes, that's right.
And then the partnership between Russia and Iran, that's been strengthened. So all of these dynamics are something we need to keep our eyes on. And the one more thing I want to talk about is Syria. We had two U.S. congressmen visit al-Shara or al-Jalani.
Al-Jalani was his war name.
Well, Al-Qaeda terrorist.
Well, that's even go back farther.
Yes.
Now, he's renounced all of that.
I know he has. But do you
think
think by trimming a beard and putting on a suit that the man has really changed his colors? Do you think he really is no longer?
You never know. A good beard and a good suit might change.
It could change the man, huh?
You never know.
Well, some of my friends in Israel don't feel that way.
What do they think?
They're very concerned.
Yes.
Time will tell, but they're very concerned. Now, what's interesting about this engagement with the U.S. congressman is they came back and gave a report that his only condition is he doesn't want Syria broken up into regions. Basically you have the Syria is a combination of the Alawites and you got
even the Kurds.
The Kurds, you got them all there.
Right.
And so it was kind of this arbitrary forming of these borders with these people groups in here that normally don't get along with one another. He wants to keep them together as a cohesive group. Understandable.
Absolutely. But remember now, what's interesting, very, very interesting, is that he's making statements that says essentially, hey, we could join the Abrahamic Accords.
He did say that, in fact. He's open to that. And by the way, in the article, he didn't post any requirement that there be a Palestinian state. I found that was the biggest tell right there.
So either this is a very, very good negotiator who knows how to position himself geopolitically. Now, he has disassociated himself with global jihadists. Yeah. And he's like, I'm not into that. I'm not going to bring global jihad. I want to be a respectable nation amongst the family.
But there were many Alawites that were recently killed.
Well, let's bring that up. Okay, he says, I want to be a respectable nation amongst the nations of the world. Meanwhile, there's persecution within his own borders.
And the curriculum is going to be very heavy in terms of anti-Semitism and Sharia law.
Sharia law, absolutely.
So again, are you going to get more of the same? He's setting that up. So, but I kind of wonder if it all kind of depends on the geopolitical landscape, especially with the United States. We have U.S. sanctions that are against Syria right now. One of his requests is to pull those sanctions.
Sure.
Not asking for U.S. money, just free us up from the sanctions.
Well, the U.S. money kind of faded away with USAID. But again, I think there's a strategy that when you step back at it, you can see the thought behind it. Right, if we play, hey, we could be part of the Abrahamic Accords. We could be part of the nations of the world. We're not going to demand a Palestinian state. We're really saying some things that bring some, I ponder, have they changed? But meanwhile, then you see persecution within their own borders.
Exactly.
And the Alawites are being destroyed, Christians. And so you think, what do we have here?
Exactly.
And I think it's a wait and see Now, of course, you were just in Israel, and you spoke, of course, to some of those that are in the know there, and their word is caution.
Very much so. Yeah. Very, very concerned about Al-Jolani Shura and also Turkey in particular.
The influence, yeah.
From the north of Israel, and biblical significance in regards to the Battle of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38, 39.
In my view, I think if I was just to project what I think is happening, I think what is happening is that they are going to say the right things, and they're going to make the right moves, and they're going to position themselves as if they are all that they are proclaiming. We're good. We want to be part of the nations of the world, and they're going to get it so far, and then they're going to turn.
I agree with you wholeheartedly because, again, the Middle East is good at playing the long game. Actually, many countries, China, the Middle East, they're great at playing the long game. We have a short election cycle.
Well, right.
And so all they have to do is wait it out. What's 4 years?
Well, also, but we've seen this over and over and over. The MO, the method, is to we believe in democracy. We will even be part of the democracy. We'll even use democracy in our systems until we don't want to do it anymore. We'll use these systems until we got to our point where now we're in control, and then we're back to dictatorship in the heavy hand of Islam.
Couldn't agree more. And again, the Bible tells us this is going to happen.
Exactly.
So we see the stage being set. It would make sense, especially when you look at Ezekiel 38, that it's going to happen in the latter years. It will come to the land that is restored from the sword, whose inhabitants have been gathered from many nations to the mountains, and basically they're at peace. They're living securely without walls.
Right.
You could see how even this peace, though temporary, sets the stage for what will happen in Ezekiel 38.
Well, let's use the Antichrist. And what we know of the Antichrist methods, it's actually the very same thing. We know that the Antichrist, when he arises on the scene, will be able to do what no man has done in the history of the world so far, bring peace to the Middle East. Right. Because he will negotiate a peace agreement between the nations of the world and Israel. Mm-hmm. Right? And so by all appearances, he's a man of tremendous ability negotiating with the nations and the leaders, highly respected, highly regarded, able to even get the respect of Israel.
7 years.
To sign this agreement of peace with the nations of the world, but he will betray that covenant of peace. He will betray it, and this is the abomination of desolation.
Exactly right.
That Jesus referred to in Matthew 24, referenced in the book of Daniel. And so, but it's the same method, right? We play the good game, until we get so far, and then we go back to the evil game.
And then we go to strike Israel.
And it's in the scriptures.
But again, it plays right into God's hands. God's not done yet.
That's right.
There's going to be 4 divine judgments against Israel's enemies. Mm-hmm. You're going to have an earthquake. They will turn the sword on one another.
Right.
There will be pestilence, and then there will be fire from heaven coming down, and Israel will be spared. All so that Israel's enemies and Israel will know that God is in heaven.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. Well, we had to make up for some lost time here.
That's right.
It's been a blessing to be with you, and I pray it's been a blessing for you as well. By the way, if you're joining us for the very first time, I want to encourage you to visit our website. I'd love to have you learn about our vision and mission here at Blessors of Israel. To get to our website, just simply type in to your browser www.blessors.org. That's Blessors with an O-R-S. .org. As I mentioned, you will see our vision and our mission, why we exist as a new organization to help equip the church and share with them the importance of standing with Israel in the latter days. By the way, make sure you visit our newsroom. There you will see not only our videos, our podcast videos, you'll see original articles with a biblical perspective, and also news curated concerning Israel and the Middle East. We want you to be the best informed when it comes to standing with Israel in the latter days and praying for Israel as well. I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, whatever channel you're watching. Make sure you like this Podcast. And by the way, share this channel with your friends, with the people you go to church with. We want to make sure we're sensing and we're seeing that YouTube in particular is suppressing our videos. And so one way we can get the word out is by sharing it with others to break that algorithm so we can get the word out and that others may understand the importance of standing with Israel as well. One more thing I want to share with you is that you can follow us on Facebook, Getter, and X, and we appreciate your prayers and your financial partnership as we build this new and important ministry. Remember, those who bless Israel will be blessed. Shalom, shalom.